Guys, welcome to another episode of WWDKD. Basically, I've been asked over the past few months about how to wet blend with a brush and stuff like that from various people, and usually I'm the last person to ask because I'm usually an airbrush guy, but I've been trying to work on my blending techniques as well with my brush, so I'll show you how I do it. Two things to keep in mind. First is that you need a lot of patience and a lot of practice. There's no shortcuts around it. You just do it, okay, until it's ingrained in your brain there to understand how it all works and stuff like that. Second, the paint we use, either GW, Vallejo, or Reaper, the acrylic paints we use, they dry transparent. When they're wet, it's opaque. You can't really tell. And then it dries in actually a different color because it kind of like layers over the bottom layer and it's transparent and the color kind of mixes up. It's kind of hard to explain, but you gotta kind of understand that in order to figure out how wet blending works. Now the techniques I use is really not a technique. I don't know. I just mesh everything together that works for me. So I'll show you how to do it my way. What I usually do is start with three colors. The mid-tone is the main color that I'll be painting the cloak here. Then I'll have a dark tone and then the light tone. The light tone is usually used for the highest highlights. In this case, I'm using Vallejo Model Color Red, which is Vallejo Game Color Scarlet Red. That's my mid-tone, and for the dark tone, I just mixed the 1 part black with 2 parts red to get the lower, darker tone. And normally I would just use the mid-tone and mix white into it to make the highlight color. However, in this case, I'm using Vallejo Model Color Vermilion, which is Vallejo Game Color Bloody Red, and then I mix 1 part white with 2 parts bloody red there. There are times where I do use less than 3 colors, like if I do black to white, I just use black and then move all the way up to white. And then there are times where I use more than 3 colors, maybe sometimes 4 or maybe 5 colors, depending on what's the easiest way to step up from the dark color to the highest highlight color. Best way to start is just using 3 tones, dark, mid, and light. And then when you get used to wet blending, you can add more colors to your palette or take away colors. Here I'm applying the dark tone to the areas where I'm going to paint the cloak red. And I usually have no problems keeping the paint moist on the model when I go back over it again with the lighter top coat. If you're having problems with the paint drying, then you might want to use retarder, either Liquidex retarder or Vallejo retarder, or any type of paint retarder. Now this is when I start to step up the colors. With the paint still wet on my brush of the darker tone, I dip it into the mid-tone. This ensures that I have both colors under the brush and that these colors will also blend on my brush as I am putting it on the surface of the model. I think that's the best way to explain it. Now often you'll see me dip the brush into a color and then I will take the brush and then slide it across the palette really quick. I do this to kickstart the blending in the brush itself between the color that was on it before with the color that I just dipped into it. Now with the new shade of color on my brush, I apply the paint on the surface of the model in places where it should be lighter. The previous coat of paint that's already on the model should be moist at this time. Not completely wet, but moist. As I mentioned before, it's important to keep the paint on your palette wet. So what I'm doing here is taking the brush and washing it into the cup that I wash it with and using that water there and taking about a drop of it on my brush and then just mixing the paint just to keep it wet. If you notice, I went back to the darker tone on the flap of the cloak here. And with wet blending, for me, I kind of call it the eternal struggle. Because what you're going to do is you're going to, step it up a tone and then push it back and step it up a tone and then push it back. So that you'll get this nice smooth blending from dark tone to lighter tone and stuff like that. So you're going to see a lot of that here. You'll also know that I jump from different areas of the cloak here. Do this to allow it to dry in one area a little bit more, from wet to moist, while I'm working on another area, and then I'll jump back to that area again and then see how it's drying up. This lets you see how smoothly the blending is working out on that area of the cloak. As you can tell, I'm going back to the same areas I've done before just to take a look at it, because it's a little more dry now and you actually start seeing the effect take place. So you know whether or not to apply a little bit more of the previous tone or the current tone, or maybe, you know, just mix it up a little bit more to, you know, lighten it or darken it. Again, it's all trial and error, and you'll start getting used to it as you practice more and more. Another important factor to remember is that you don't want to apply too much. Sometimes you might have too much of a load on your brush. You might have to release some of that paint on the brush itself. Just slide it on your palette or at the back of your hand a little. Just get rid of some of the paint and before you put it on the surface. Again, going over the same areas here, because when the paint starts drying, the color dulls. And this is the part where you really have to understand how it works. It dulls because it's transparent, right? When it dries, it's transparent. So in order to make the color brighter in that area, you're going to have to paint another coat of the same tone over it, or maybe a tone that's a little lighter. And each layer you put onto it, the more it blends into the layer underneath, as well as it blends while it's still wet. So it's kind of a combination of you know, layering and wet blending. Now normally there's still a lot more work to do with the mid and darker tone here, but I'm going to start using the highlight tone. Now when to use the highlight tone really is when you're really confident that the way it blends from the dark color to the mid tone and you're happy with it, right? Then you start working from the mid tone to the light tone, or the highlight tone. Now while it's wet, you're looking at this right now and you go, whoa, that's a little bright. That's okay. Remember, it dulls a little, as well as there's other ways that you're going to go back and you're going to push back down the color a bit. Now I'm going to push back the highlights here because you see it's really bright, at least for my taste it is. What I'm going to do is use the mid-tone color, and I will dilute it down to a very wet consistency. I went ahead and cleaned off my brush, And then I went ahead and took the consistency that I mixed of the paint, and then I painted over the highlights itself. It'll dull down the highlight, push back the color a little. You would also have noticed that the highlight, between the highlights and the mid-tone, that there is a hard break in it. I would also go ahead and slosh this mix between that as well. And it might take several coats to do it, but once it's done, you'll see it blend right between the two colors. I think some people call this glazing. This might be glazing. In scale modeling, it's basically filtering. Whatever it's called, it freaking works. At this point, it's a stopping point for me. I would stop, take a look at the overall effect. I let it dry. I either let it sit there and dry or use a blow dryer. As you can tell, yeah, there's still a lot more work to be done, and you just go back and apply the same techniques over and over again until you get what you want. I did rush it for this video, so basically what you want to do is work on the dark tone and mid-tone first, and work between there until you get a good blending, and then mid-tone to the highlight, and then work there until you get a good blending. And then just pick up other models and just keep going, keep doing it. Even if you mess up, it's okay, wash it off, do it again, and then sooner or later you're going to get that click in your head going, oh, I understand now, and you'll get it. Now hopefully you got a gist of how it works and stuff and how I do it, so maybe that you could try that. But again, it's all about practice, experience. There's some other videos here that will help you. The links are at the bottom of the description. You can go to them after you watch this video. Don't forget to check out my last two videos, Inside Out, where I review the Circle of Ouroboros War Pack, as well as Straight Up SSMFF. If you have any comments or suggestions, just post them down below. Sub if you haven't subbed, like if you like this video, and favorite if you love me. I'll talk to you guys later.